I'm Monica Bush, a reporter with the Sentinel and Enterprise, and we are at one of the entrances to the Leominster State Forest, and I am joined by Leominster resident, local native Ronny LeBlanc. But why don't I let you explain why you are here with me and
Sure.
what you're doing?
Yeah. Leominster State Forest has been kind of a central figure in Monsterland, my book, and I have a second book coming out, which is basically a sequel to that. But people have been seeing strange things around here for a long time. UFOs, Bigfoot-type creatures, balls of light, orbs, orange orbs. And so I've always been fascinated by that. And this particular trail, we're on Elm Street Trail going into Leominster State Forest, has had a lot of activity. And recently, people have had visual sightings of Bigfoot-type creatures.
What's recent?
Recent, within the last 8 months, 9 months, a couple of visual sightings. And who do you go to, right, to tell these things, and who's going to believe you?
You.
And I just had this fascination since I was a kid. I had an experience in the woods when I was young that I didn't really understand. And people are having those similar kind of encounters and experiences that they can't really wrap their head around. And I've always wanted to see that kind of come to light more. And it's starting to. I think there's a paradigm shift kind of happening.
So you've been collecting these stories?
I have, and I've been just experiencing stuff myself too. But it's amazing to me that the stories that continue to come, not only from people currently having these experiences, but that people have had in the past that they're now willing to share 30, 40 years later. So that tells me something that, ridicule and everything has kind of kept those stories encapsulated, but now we're seeing the egg crack a little bit.
All right. Well, why don't you take us in?
All right. It seems that when I go on certain hikes, certain things will happen, but then different people have some experiences. In this particular trail, a researcher who's been coming here now for a couple of years came back because he had an experience deep in here finding these small tree-like structures. And he's kind of remarked that looked like little kids kind of put these together, but they were kind of off trail and just seemed odd. And when it comes to
Can you describe what you mean by structures?
yeah, so almost like little teepees, or almost like tree branches, different ones kind of put together in such a way that it's not a natural tree fall and something just breaks and lands on a certain way, but something that seems to be constructed with something that has hands. Now, obviously, people, right off the bat, but sometimes these are found in Bigfoot research areas where people have had sightings, and it started to be noted throughout the country. So he's looked at those structures as something kind of anomalous that just doesn't really make sense. And as he was digging a little bit further, he said that he got hollered at by what sounded like a gorilla.
Here?
Here.
And what kind of research does he do? Is he a Bigfoot researcher?
He's a Bigfoot researcher.
Okay.
He's here specifically just looking for evidence.
Okay.
Believing that there is a undiscovered primate that lives in the woods that we don't really go to all the time, and if we do, we stay on the trail. We don't really venture off too far. And one of the things is hunters. Well, why don't hunters see Bigfoot creatures? They do.
They do.
They do, and a lot of their stories don't get told. But there's a researcher, David Polides, who's an ex-police officer, did a bunch of books on missing 411 of people disappearing from state forest that just disappear without a trace, and connecting some of these Bigfoot stories to those possible disappearances. And so certain people, other researchers have kind of come here and had experiences, and that individual who's in his late 60s, who I know, shared with some other people one of his experiences coming out of here.
Is he from here, or is he someone?
No, he's from Western Mass.
Okay, so from Massachusetts.
Yeah.
So. And so he came here specifically because of the stories of interactions and
Yeah,
sightings?
and just his own personal experience where he got something that sounded like an ape in these woods that shouldn't be here, that physically shook his body from the sound that he took off running. And he had come back several times And on his last trip here, he was walking out and got to the end and kind of did this one last look back. And I'm not sure exactly where this was positioned, but he said when he turned back, there was a figure standing by the tree and was aligned with the tree. And he couldn't tell if it was looking at him or looking this way. And he noticed another hiker coming up the hill, walking over. And at that point, this thing turned and looked at him. So now he made eye contact with it. So he's like, you know, this thing was watching the other hiker.
Yeah.
He then said that it turned and nonchalantly just started walking away into the woods while he just stood there watching it.
This close to the parking area?
Yeah. Now
When
here's
was
where, this was I think 8 months ago.
Okay, this is one of the recent ones.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is where it gets weird.
Oh, this is where.
This is where it gets weird. So as he's watching this thing walk away, he notices the hand starts to go invisible. If you've ever seen the movie Predator, Arnold Schwarzenegger,
Yeah.
it started to go invisible all the way up his arm until the whole body vanished as it walked into the woods.
Goodness.
Now,
How do you make sense of that?
is this thing like a ghost or something from the past? Is this something physically real that has the ability to kind of bend light or camouflage itself like certain animals? Or is it something else? And one of the theories is that with all this, the talk with the UFOs, the Navy has confirmed that yes, new UFOs are real. Who's piloting these things? What are they? What do they want? And so there's a lot of theories out there from researchers before me that have been doing this for 40, 50, 60 years, have then said that this thing is not just an animal, there's something else to it. And it sounds like strange, crazy science fiction, but we continue to get stories like this that kind of boggle the mind, that say, yeah, maybe this is something that has the ability to do things that we don't understand yet.
Now, is it the repetition of the stories that makes you believe in these ideas?
I think, one, just having my own personal experiences confirms it, but hearing these stories, still, I doubt. You know, initially kind of like, really? But there's so many of them, and if you look at the stories across the country, across the world, they all line up. They all kind of have the same situations. There's certain things that kind of connect them all that, okay, this sounds, even though it sounds crazy, this happened. There's police officers, there's pilots that are seeing things that say, I'm seeing something that doesn't make any sense, that goes from 10,000 feet to 1,000 feet in a second. G-forces that would kill a person. So those things, we just don't know a lot about this planet, right? And we can only see 1% of the visual spectrum. So 99% of what we're seeing is invisible. So maybe something can kind of go behind those veils. And Sasquatch seems to be one of those things. And it's a fascinating thing. It doesn't seem real, but people are having sightings and experiences.
Independent of one another.
Yeah.
So shall we walk a little bit
Sure.
further? So do you tend to go for walks where you are looking to find, whether it's evidence or see something unusual, or does it just sort of fall in your lap?
A lot of times, like I mentioned, I'll come here just to kind of go for a walk and just be with nature. But people that have read the book or understand what I've been kind of doing now will come forward with their stories. And I've had 2 psychic mediums that have come to Leominster State Forest on separate occasions.
With you?
Separately, nope. I have no influence. One of them to show up and come up and tell me what you think. And one of them felt like they were being watched the whole time, and she got the impression of a big figure. And another one got the impression of multiple ones coming through here. So, and talking about like Sasquatch.
Now, was this research for your first book?
Second book.
This is research for your second book.
Yeah.
You asked them to come out here and
Yep.
tell you, let you know for yourself what you saw.
Right.
Okay.
And there's another researcher as well that I discussed in the book who had missing time experience on this trail. He came
Yeah, can you explain what that means?
Sure.
What we got now?
Yeah, so
Missing
a lot of
time.
time, missing time is pretty much kind of connected to UFO abductions. So someone will see strange light in the sky, or they'll see a craft. Something happens, there's a flash of light, and all of a sudden they realize 25, 30 minutes have gone by. And you have missing time, they can't account for it. And there's been quite a few people that have come from this area that have had those type of experiences. And missing time seems to also be connected to Sasquatch encounters and sightings. And this particular guy was coming, he's a researcher, works for the Bigfoot Field Research Organization, which is a national organization. They have different chapters in the different states, and people can report their encounters or sightings to their database.
Yeah.
And so he was coming here, read the book, read Monsterland, and I've been kind of talking to him throughout this whole process, but he came with a backpack and a camera looking for evidence, and by himself. He then saw a green ball of light. This is at dusk time, so there was still daylight.
Yeah.
This green ball of light started moving towards him, changed color to orange. He then said he felt like a vibration in his whole body, not in his head, but that his body started to almost shake from this light. He then reached into his backpack to pull out the camera, and he couldn't move his arm, like it was frozen. And then, boom, it was like half an hour later, gone. This light's gone. He's there. The light has changed. Time has passed. He doesn't know how. But he said from that point forward, it was like, he felt like he got recharged in a way.
Yeah.
And those stories, they just don't add up. Doesn't make any sense. But people are having these things. And so my first book was really talking about that connection between Bigfoot, orbs, UFOs, and these special places.
As it relates to Leominster
Yeah,
specifically.
and
so the second book is, how is that different from the first?
So it's basically kind of digging a little bit deeper into some of these ideas, but then also looking at widening the net, and that there are other places like Monsterland, which was a small section in southern Leominster by Old Mill Road, where people had some different experiences, UFOs, Bigfoot type creatures. But as it got developed commercially, residentially, those seem to kind of cease happening. But now, whether it's been happening here continually or it's shifted, a lot of activity is in Leominster State Forest and
So
the
it
surrounding
seems to
areas.
have moved
Yeah,
the stories.
yep.
Interesting.
And I talk about this in the book too. A lot of places, if you look, national forests, state forests, any of the ones that have trails that say hells or devils were basically called that because the Native Americans of the area had given them similar names for reasons, probably because there's stuff that's had happened there.
Like the Devil's Pulpit, which is in Purgatory Chasm.
Right. So if you look at all those different spots, those seem to even have some history or sightings and different things. And so we have our own Hell's Highway over here, which is off of Palmer Road Trail. And so it's just interesting, you look at these different spots throughout the country, they have similar things happening. And I believe, like, Monsterland, which for me is Leominster itself, but Leominster State Forest I would call Monsterland, as opposed to the little small spot back in the 60s that the locals dubbed. But
Behind Walmart now?
yeah. And but there's places like Monsterland all over the country and all over the world that have the same thing. And for whatever reason, a lot of the stories stay within the city walls. People don't talk about it, or only a few people will share it. But Leominster's been on this UFO map going back a long time. Before it was called Monsterland, they called that area the UFO landing area.
Really?
That's
This
what the
was
old.
back when?
Yes. So this was before they called it Monsterland. A couple of old timers had told me, "Do you know what they called it before?" And I was like, "No." He goes, "The UFO landing area."
Wow.
I'm like, whoa, that's a little
And this was
coincidental.
30s, 40s?
I think 50s.
Okay.
Yeah, 40s, 50s. So I just find all these things. I just start stacking them up, and you start seeing like a pattern forming, and you start seeing maybe there's something to this. Yeah, people are gonna make up stories. They're gonna lie. You have to take that into consideration.
Are you ever told stories where you're like, that's probably not true?
Yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah. And like I was saying before too, there's certain things that they might say that line up with other stories that they don't know that you know these common threads. And there's other times that people are just, they think you're going to make millions doing this stuff. You know, you don't make any money. I'm not doing this for the money. It's more of just this curiosity that I have to understand. I need to know what's going on. And it's one of those things I've tried to shut it off and I can't. And people keep on coming forward with it too, so I feel like I am serving some kind of purpose, helping either being a sounding board or sharing these stories. And now what's happening in the whole climate with UFOs and everything else, I think that's going to kind of affect the Bigfoot world and all these other worlds that people are going to have to start looking at life in general. What are these things that are coming in and out of our atmosphere, showing up here and there?
Now, were you raised in a family or two that was open to this kinds of?
No.
No, you were raised in a skeptic or?
Well, I was raised, Christian home, and things like this were almost like it's either evil, it's good or evil, and you don't mess with this kind of stuff. And so it was kind of a hard thing to kind of even navigate because your kind of preconceived notions and beliefs, you have to kind of put those aside sometimes to really understand what's going on. You can have a belief system, but there's facts that seem to be kind of shifting your beliefs that you have to kind of take a look at that.
So your experiences have just sort of swayed you so far.
Yeah. And for a lot of people, I need to see it to believe it, or I need to experience it, yourself to believe it. Come, do a hike, do a walk, do different things. It's said that they kind of choose who they interact with. But
meaning the Sasquatch?
Yeah, and people that don't believe, that don't want to have anything to do with it. I just spoke at the Exeter UFO Festival, and there was a gentleman that said, I have had no interest in this whatsoever. But I started going to a certain section of the woods and then things started happening and talked about his experiences, which just kind of blew me away. But here's someone that I don't have anything to do with this. I don't believe in it, but it's happening that I can't deny it. And he's in a position that works for the town or city, so he's petrified to even reveal this, but was willing to kind of have the courage to kind of share his experience, which then people were just kind of popping up sharing their stuff, and I'm blown away that this is continually happening.
Now, did you have fear when you decided to put yourself out there from the